Hey, what's going on, guys? It's time for another part of Kingdom. Now, I know it's been nearly 2 years since I released a video about this, but we're going to continue on from part 3 and go into part 4. Now, if you remember from last time, we finished up with the Sanyo campaign arc and the Sanyo aftermath arc. So in this video, we're going to start with chapter 257, the Coalition Invasion arc, and end with the Kyou Kai Revenge Arc. So that's going to take us to chapter 365. Now, unlike my last Kingdom video, I'm not going to take a hiatus. I am hellbent on catching up with the current manga. And as of releasing this video, chapter 793 is currently out. So we got our work cut out for us, guys, but we will do it together. I'm hoping maybe by the end of the summer of 2024, we'll be all caught up. So anyway, thank you for your patience, and please enjoy the video. Ten wakes up with Shin hugging onto her. He's also got his hand going up her shirt. 3 months have passed since Ten joined the Shin unit, and she's already managed to fit in pretty well. Chin and Chu's forces stare each other down for a bit before pulling out. The Shin unit then finds an injured kid that was attacked by the Han army. The boy is from the state of Zhou, and he begs for Shin to save his mother. The Shin unit comes upon a field of brutalized corpses, most of them consisting of women and children, propelling Shin to take action. The Han army attempts to break through the Zhou gates with a battering ram. Now the citizens consider taking their own lives, as it's possible they might become slaves and brutalized. That is, until the Shin army comes storming onto the scene. Ten commands the infantry to go into the city and smash the Han army. Now Shin's horsemanship is improved by leaps and bounds, as he takes down Bakken, the enemy leader. Afterwards, Shin and Ten find out that Zhou is under the protection of Wei, Zhao, and Chu. Now they do this by selling information to maintain their safety. Zhou then gives the Shin unit a map of the surrounding area. On their way to Token City, the Shin unit spots Riboku as he steps out of his carriage. Even though Chin and Zhao are currently allied, Shin wants to be ready to charge the enemy at a moment's notice. Shin goes off by himself and spots Riboku and some mysterious guy in a tent. Kanei sneaks up and attacks Shin, as Riboku is shocked to see that Shin is here. Shin demands to know who Riboku was just talking to right now, but Riboku says that that's none of his business. Now we as the readers discover that it was Shun Shin Kun, Prime Minister of Chu, and it seems that he was discussing a Chu-Zhao alliance with Riboku. Now if Shin wants any information from Riboku, he'll have to best him in a duel. Kanei and Ten then notice that Shin and Riboku are about to cross swords. Shin takes the early initiative, but Riboku sends him flying back. Now Ten assumed that Riboku was merely a strategist, but that's when she notices the multitude of battle scars on his arm. Shin isn't interested in taking down Riboku head on. He'd much rather beat him in the battlefield. Whilst the two armies are ready to leave, Ten tells Riboku that she knows something is going on, and she speculates that he was discussing a Chu-Zhao alliance. Now Riboku reminds them that it's not the alliance that's important, but rather the objective and the outcome. You have yet to realize the true terror of war, says Riboku. Shin decides to leave as Kanei goes up to Ten and says, if you ever find yourself without a home, come seek me out. 20 days later, Riboku visits King Kaibin of Wei. The Shin unit guards Token City, as it's been a month since Shin came across Riboku. And ever since that day, neither Zhao or Chu have made any movements. Mo-Ten then informs Shin that Ohan has been promoted to 2,000-man commander. Back in Kanyo, Ko has become pregnant with Sei's child. Back in Token, Ten is shocked to find out that Sei's got a kid on the way. The Shin unit then makes their way out of Token as they run into the remnants of Oki's army. Kano states that a storm is brewing, one even greater than Bayo, the battle where they lost their Lord General Oki. And these suspicions turn out to be true, as only 2 days later, Chu launches an attack on Chin in the 6th year of Sei's reign. And as a reminder, this is 241 BC. Rinbu leads the invasion for the Chu army. That superpower of a state has finally turned its gaze on Chin. The Chu army is 50,000 strong and has already made its way to Yasen. The Chu army is avoiding the Mobu and the Chotu armies by pushing forward and avoiding conflict. To heads off the Chu army and wishes to stall them until reinforcements come. Dokin, 5th army commander of the To army, gets brutalized by Rinbu. The Shin unit looks to head off Chu, but they then notice a huge Wei army, and it's making its way to Chin. The Wei army obliterates the city of Saki in no time flat. Garyo falls next, as Shin wants to chase down the Wei until they catch them. In Kanyo, reports of Riboku talking with the Chu have surfaced. Just then, reports come in that Zhao is laying siege to Bayo City. And to add insult to injury, reports say that the Yan army of 120,000 strong broke through the northern defense and is advancing further into Chin. It seems the 6 states have formed a coalition against the Chin. The 6 armies encroach upon Chin, as Riboku commands the troops onwards. Now this occurred once before, when the coalition went against the Qi, and as a result, Qi lost everything. Riboku wants to paralyze Chin with a swift attack. Despite the odds, Sei commands the council to draft up a plan to fight the invading forces. Shohei says that they could strike the coalition army with the help of Chi, whose armies have yet to reach Chin. Saitaku meets up with the king of Chi, King Okin. Saitaku then wonders how much Riboku paid for Chi's loyalty. Riboku promised to split the lands of Chin among the 6 states, based on how many troops that they contributed to the war effort. Now Saitaku personally guarantees to double this amount. And with this, King Okin accepts, and he orders his forces to retreat from Chin. Though Chi is not helping out Chin, the threat of doing so will put the other armies at a disadvantage. Now Wei's army has advanced the furthest into Chin, as they are now fighting against Dukyo. Gohei Mei, commander-in-chief of the Wei army, cautions his men to pay Dukyo respect, since he's the one that killed his grandfather, Gokei. Shin's forces charge into the battlefield to help out Dukyo. Gohei Mei then employs an innovative strategy, forcing Dukyo to pull out. At nightfall, Dukyo thanks Shin for his assistance. After explaining the gravity of the situation, he offers to let Shin accompany him on the upcoming battles. Dukyo's army goes into its 4th day of battle with the Wei army. Despite Dukyo's early losses, his men continue to win every vital clash. Chin's army retreats as Gohei Mei meets up with Riboku. The two exchange some words, before Riboku announces that he wants to completely and utterly destroy Chin. Shohei devises a plan that has a 1 in 5 shot of succeeding. But, unfortunately, it's their best opportunity. Ryofu says that this is an acceptable gamble. Chin continues to sustain heavy losses, forcing many citizens to abandon their homes. In Kanyo, Chin's great generals have all assembled. We have Mobu, Chotu, Tu, Osen, Kanki, Mogo, and Dukyo. Total warfare is inevitable, and if they fail, Chin will cease to exist as a state. Elsewhere, the various heads of the coalition army meet up with Riboku and the prime minister of Chu. We've got Kanmei of Chu, Ordu of Yan, Gohei Mei of Wei, and Saikei of Han. Shun Shin will serve as the coalition army's commander-in-chief, with Riboku serving as the strategical advisor, and he will ensure that everyone stays in line. Shohei wants all the armies to focus on their defensive position, and that's going to be at Kankoku Pass, the National Gate. Shin's unit is then recalled to the National Gate, as Shin himself is utterly amazed by the size of the gate. This is going to be the location of the decisive battle, says Shin. Shohei has given Mobu the most costly role in the upcoming battle. Now Shohei admits that he was outplayed by Riboku, and he can't believe that someone saw through his schemes for the Sanyo campaign. Elsewhere, Riboku admits that Shin was on the verge of checkmating all of China. Shin and Ohan trade barbs as the latter is set on becoming a general soon. Now this war provides an opportunity for Shin to become a 5,000-man commander. We then receive a map with the layouts of all the armies, as the battle finally kicks off. The Haishin unit is with Dukyo, facing off against the Zhao army. Moten and Ohan are placed with the To army, facing off against the Chu. Han and Wei will attack Kankoku Pass, and Ordo of Yan will go against Osen. Chu initiates the proceedings by rallying their troops. Rinbu shouts, "All troops!" But Dukyo yells charge and steals the moment. Dukyo with the Haishin units smash into the Zhao forces. Ten reverses course, since she'll analyze the battle from the rear. Kanmei and Rinbu of Chu are angry that Dukyo has stolen their moment. 241 BC, Coalition Army vs. Chin Army. The Battle of Kankoku Pass begins. Now Kyou Kai wants to still avenge her sister, so she hopes that the Haishin unit can survive without her. Shin blasts his way through the Zhao forces, with a look of fury on his face. Rihaku was given orders not to assume a defensive formation, which seems a bit odd. Dukyo is looking for a place where he can latch his claws into. As such, Dukyo senses that something is off. He then reshuffles his men, preparing for a second charge. Keisha then reorganizes the troops to attack Dukyo from the rear. So the ones that were just repositioned from the front are now being attacked from the rear. Now although most would have difficulty in reading Dukyo's actions, Keisha has no problems, since he's an instinctual general. Keisha is much like a spider, laying subtle traps and waiting for her opponent to charge in. Rihaku explains that Dukyo senses the flow of the battle. He does this by looking at formations and even looking at the other men's eyes. But because Keisha didn't give out the plans to the battle, there were no tells for Dukyo to latch onto. Dukyo then goes into a frenzy, as his army is dwindled down. It seems like Dukyo's army will already be defeated right after the Battle of Kankoku Pass has begun. Fortunately for Chin, the Haishin unit breaks through, officially beginning the counterattack. Now this is the current situation with Dukyo at the front and Shin at the rear. Even though it's reckless, Shin ran backwards through the column of soldiers. And with this, Shin commands 10,000 troops in the rear, and he's poised for the counterattack. "The lad has managed to splendidly ignite a great blaze behind us," says Kyou. Kyou now focuses on the Zhao commander hiding in the way back. At Kankoku Pass, Kanki and Chotu order their men to fire arrows upon the Wei soldiers. Wei then brings out a siege tower, and this is a great shock to the many Qin generals. Riboku says that this is no good, as it still won't reach the top of the wall. The tower then releases counterweights, giving it an extension that reaches the top of the wall. Turns out that Gohome specifically designed the siege tower for Kankoku Pass. Wei soldiers climb their way up, as it looks like the situation is very dire. Another siege tower makes its way to the gate, as Riboku and Shin are quite impressed. Now the tower is funneling troops from the bottom to the top, making the situation especially precarious. Nevertheless, Kanki then ignites the tower with a fire arrow, making Gohome quite angry. Despite this development, Riboku and Shin still remain confident that the siege tower can serve as a useful foothold. On the other side of the battlefield, Mobu and To's armies of 90,000 are up against 150,000 Chu. In a flashback, Mobu tells Moten that they need to take down the Chu First Army with the To army. Now Mobu will hang back, since that's what Rinbu is doing for Qin. Koyoku attempts to decapitate Moten, but the latter deflects the attack. The two trade blows, with Koyoku being impressed with Moten's skill. Rokuomi then plows through the Chu army with the remnants of the Oki unit. Rokuomi carves his way to Rinbu as the two begin to clash. Rinbo then charges in on Rinbu, but is pierced with an arrow in the head. Hakurei, who shot the arrow, attempts to eliminate Rokuyomi next, but Rinbu doesn't want the help. Moten manages to locate Hakurei, and thusly divides his unit into two, with one going towards the archer. To says that their only hope of defeating Chu is with quality over quantity. Moten looks to assassinate Hakurei, but Koyoku intervenes at the last second and manages to disarm Moten. Koyoku looks to finish him off, but Ohan arrives at the last second to save Moten. Ohan and Koyoku engage each other in a fierce combat. Koyoku then pulls out the legendary Bakuya sword. It turns out that this is one of the 5 treasured swords, and it was forged by a legendary couple with divine talent. Elsewhere, Rinbu is having his way with Rokuyomi. Rinbu castigates the Qin, saying they have no idea what it takes to become a general in the state of Chu. If they truly wish to challenge him, they'll have to drag out Oki from his grave. And with this, To enters the battlefield. Just then, Rinbu begins to tremble as To slaughters his way through the battlefield. In a flashback, To acknowledges Mobu's strength, saying that Oki made him better. But for To, he's always been strong. Koyoku has confidence in Rinbu's talents, since he's always placed himself at the front of the battlefield. Despite his tenacity, To manages to slice the general across the chest. "Impossible! Just what the hell are you?" says Rinbu. "A great general under the heavens," responds To. Rinbu acknowledges To's strength, yet he is not ready to admit defeat. Hakurei wants to eliminate Rinbu's opponent, but he then notices that Moten was hiding underneath his platform. He redirects the shot at Moten as the latter cuts through his bow. Rinbu is in disbelief that his strength is failing him. Now while Rinbu has strength, To has the pride of serving with Oki, a man who is recognized as one of the great generals of all of China. Rinbu says that only the Chu are capable of becoming great generals, but To lands a critical strike and says that's not true. And with this, Rinbu, commander of the First Chu army, falls in battle. News spreads quickly of Rinbu's defeat, making this a great blow to the coalition army. And as we find out, the coalition armies have spies in each other's camps. So anything that happens on one battlefield is known by the other generals. Just an interesting little detail to keep in mind. Meanwhile, the battle rages on between Kyou and the Zhao army. Ten decides to head into the battlefield to reform and rally the men inside. Shin continues his bloody rampage as he catches the gaze of one of the Zhao officials. Now the Qin army burned 400,000 Zhao people. Now the Mangoku army is comprised of soldiers that were related to those people. Can you feel it, boy of Qin? Can you feel our darkness? Shin cares not about the atrocities committed in the past as he plunges deeper into the battlefield. Ten reaches the Shin unit, commanding them to move forward to Shin's location. Mangoku recounts the events that went down at Chohei, the place where Hakuki massacred thousands. "Let's all die together and curse Qin for all eternity with this hatred." Now it turns out that Mangoku was buried alive, but somehow he climbed his way out of his own grave. And now as a result, he wants to slaughter every last person that lives in Qin. The Mangoku army looks to eradicate them, but that's when Ten and the rest of the Haishin unit comes to the rescue. Rihaku sends an additional 1,000 troops to Mangoku to help out. A Qin soldier attacks Mangoku, but he easily dodges and lands a counter hit. Ten calls out Mangoku's egregious actions, but the general says that men are cursed to continually kill each other. Now, wars come from boundaries, but Sei will unite everyone, and Shin will be his unbreakable sword. Shin kills a couple of soldiers as he begins his clash with Mangoku. So Sui cuts off Mangoku's armies, as Shin and Mangoku continue to trade blows. Mangoku cuts many wounds into Shin, and nearly knocks him off of his horse. Shin claims that Mangoku is cursed with hatred, a burden that he created for himself. Shin then seizes the initiative, and gives Mangoku a mortal wound. Shin then kneels before the fallen general, and vows to never commit or allow a tragedy like Chohei to ever happen again. Now from beneath the earth, Mangoku will be watching. Now the High Shin unit would withdraw from the battlefield. Mangoku's army would pursue them like mad dogs, but would ultimately fail to avenge their general. Though Keisha was right before Dukyo, the Shin general decided to retreat since the sun was setting. With the coming of dusk, all the battles were put on hold. News of Shin's accomplishment then reaches Aisei's ears. "Shin, you truly are saving us," says Aisei. Shin then gets slapped by Dukyo, and ends up falling on top of Ten with his lips. Dukyo takes a giant gulp of victory wine, and then offers some to Shin. Shin chugs it down, feeling an intense burn inside his throat. Dukyo acknowledges Shin's accomplishment, saying that it could shift the winds of war. Dukyo then bolsters Shin's forces, now making it 2,000 men that he'll oversee. "You must evolve yourself in this great war, Shin lad." Riboku is informed that Shin was the one that killed Mangoku. Yoku vows to avenge Rinbu as the Chu army lights his body ablaze as they say their farewells. Likewise, To bids Rinbo farewell. Shunshin says that Chu will deploy their second army, though they have a bit of a personality problem, and that's because they're led by General Karen. It had to be a Karen, am I right? Now I know I pronounced a lot of the names incorrectly in the manga, so I'm wondering, is it Karin or Karen? I'm gonna say Karen for the rest of this video, but let me know in the comments. Now Karen's size is quite surprising, as she towers over most of the troops. Rokin, Rinbu's lieutenant, pledges his allegiance to Karen, but she snaps his neck with a swift kick to the jaw. She tasks the remnants of the first army to kill To, and if they fail, they'll all be executed. Chu's army goes into the second day, though they don't really have a clear plan. Things have stalled for Wei and Yan, so it's up to Chu to make some progress. Commander-in-Chief Kame demands to know why Karen hasn't moved the second army. She claims that this is part of her strategy. In fact, she wants to conquer Kankoku Pass itself. Rinboku receives a message from Karen that says that Kankoku Pass will fall in the next 10 days. Now, Ordo's army has absorbed many of the mountain tribes, so they are specialized at sieging mountain forts. Envoys from HQ inform the top generals to employ attrition warfare for about the next 10 to 12 days. And as such, things proceed uneventfully for the next 2 days. Mogo and Shoto find the activities of the coalition army odd. Now Mogo says that the younger, more talented Shin generals wouldn't be able to hold Kankoku Pass, since they do not possess enough weight. Let us etch our names into history together, Choto. Now things proceed uneventfully until the 7th day. Saikai, Han Commander-in-Chief, tells the Wei army to move aside, as it's now his turn at Kankoku Pass. "Begin. Archer teams loose," says Saikai. Now it turns out that the Han army is using poison weapons. Turns out that Seikai steeped himself in research of poisons, continuously mixing and distilling until he devised a unique poison to be used for martial purposes. And due to his own fondness for poisons, it has ruined his otherwise beautiful body. The Han army then starts using ballista to shoot at the Shin generals. In a surprising turn of events, Seikai decides to retreat, saying that the real thing still has yet to come. After the 7th day of combat, Ohan and Moten begin to talk to each other. Now for Shin to pull out this victory, they're gonna have to do something special. They're gonna have to be in the right place at the right time. And after the 8th day of fighting, nothing major would change. Choto then wonders if Kanki has the resolve to protect the kingdom, as we see that Choto himself has been infected by the poison. Kyou Kai makes it to Zhao. She hears rumors that Shin and the coalition army are fighting each other in a stalemate right now. Ryofu wonders why the coalition army would be dragging things out, especially with the threat of Chi behind them. Shohei speculates that an all-out attack is imminent, and in this scenario, Shin would be screwed. Luckily, all the Shin soldiers are aware of this eventuality, which means they can make the proper preparations. "Tomorrow night, we will toast each other on the walls of Kankoku Pass," says Riboku. The next morning, the 120,000 strong Chu army sets forth. The final clash is in full swing, with Shin plowing through numerous soldiers. The Yan army weakens Osen's left flank. Mobu charges into battle, claiming that he's the strongest, and he wants to smash Kanmei to a pulp. Heki's unit of 3,000 soldiers charges into the Kanmei army. Now it's Mobu's speech that gave them the courage to rage out on the battlefield. Mobu then orders his troops to assault with the echelon formation, a maneuver that is quite advanced and hard to pull off. And given that Mobu is not really a tactician, this is quite surprising. This attack formation is specifically designed to throw off the enemy's cohesion. Now Chu's army has been caught off guard. Kanmei looks to use his numbers advantage to obliterate the Mobu army. Karen wishes to join in as well, but wants to do so with some grandeur, with some fearsomeness, and just a little bit of cuteness. Karen's army then creates a smokescreen, allowing them to deploy their elephants onto the battlefield. The elephants storm their way through the Toh army. Toh has confidence that his men can handle the elephants, but the men are surprised that the elephants are moving in formations. Rokoyomi manages to get on top of one of the elephants, and slaughters the Chu soldiers commanding it. Toh's army drives the elephants off, so it looks like an early victory, but unbeknownst to them, this was a diversion for Karen to assemble her troops in the optimal formation, leaving Shin at a severe disadvantage. Toh is forced to assume a defensive position, meaning that he cannot send aid to those surrounded by the enemy. An endless stream of attacks from every direction. Just how long will you be able to hold out? Says Karen. Toh then assigns 5,000 troops to Ohan in the left army, and another 5,000 to Moten in the right army. The Wei army brings out oversized crossbows, and they plan on using them on Kankoku Pass. Now the bolts serve as nails in the wall, allowing the soldiers to climb up to the top. Wei then brings out a siege tower, as the Wei soldiers begin climbing the wall again. Now Seikai's poison kicks in 8 days, and unfortunately for Choto, it's been 8 days since he's been poisoned. In a flashback, we find out that Kanki couldn't care less if Chin gets destroyed. The only reason that he's here is because he's freaking good at warfare. Now if Choto ever finds himself in a pinch, he merely needs to grovel before Kanki for help. Now Wei climbs up the wall from multiple angles, as Choto continues to cough up blood. Kanki deploys the cavalry to turn the tides. They then use oil and fire arrows to shoot at the ground. They then throw smoke bombs by the tower, causing all the men to panic and evacuate. After realizing that there was no fire inside the tower, they see Kanki and his cavalry on the ground. Kanki's army now stares at a sea of enemies, yet surprisingly, he's not worried in the least. Now they steal one of the Wei flags and brazenly wade through unnoticed by anyone else. Essentially, they're a group of 80 soldiers amongst hundreds of thousands of Wei soldiers. It's pretty insane. Now Choto also decided to make his descent to the battlefield, and he marvels at Kanki's brazenness. In fact, his strategy rivals that of the 6 great Chin generals. Meanwhile, Kanki, in a mocking sort of way, encourages the Wei soldiers to kill the Chin scum. I mean, could this guy get any more based? I mean, god damn. Now they make their way to the Han soldiers, as their objective is clear. They want to kill Seikai, the Han commander-in-chief. Now Kanki sent a total of 5 detachment units, with each of them having 80 men. And with all of them converging on Seikai, they'll have 400 men in total. A report comes into Seikai that a group of Wei soldiers have gone through their camps, and they're quickly approaching HQ. Now Seikai has no idea who they are, but anyone that would turn a blade on a Han soldier is an enemy. Hold nothing back. Wipe them out to the last man. Mogu then goes to the center of Kankoku Pass, since he's the only general that can oversee the wall now. Kanki's men are shocked by Choto's aggressiveness and resilience in the battlefield. Unfortunately for Choto, the poison is setting in, as he begins to cough up more and more blood. Now Seikai deduced that the Choto unit was bait, and that the real attack was coming from the flanks. So using his sharp eyes, he decided to move forward into safety. Unfortunately for him, he didn't calculate that Choto would get a second wind and burst his way through. Now Choto is the oldest of the Chin generals, and he wants an honorable death on the battlefield, but not by poison. Anything but poison. Despite getting hit with yet another poison arrow, Choto rushes his way forward, bent on killing Seikai with all his might. Seikai remains in disbelief that his poison hasn't worked, but Choto says, "What would you know of a general's strength? A commander does not show his back and flee," says Choto as he slices Seikai right down the middle. Afterwards, Kanki says, "Don't croak on me just yet, geezer. You still need to grovel before me as a part of our agreement, remember?" Now Choto won't grovel, but he does say this: "Become the #1 general in Chin, Kanki. I leave Chin to you." And with this, Choto falls to his death. but not before Kanki catches his body. By the time they discovered that Seikai was murdered, Kanki had already made his way away from the scene. Now this comes at a cost, because the 3-story watchtower at Kankoku Pass has been set ablaze. Riboku and Shunshin are surprised by Seikai's death, but Riboku determines that Shin must be on its last leg right now. The Haishin unit takes a water break from the intense battling. Despite Dukyo's progress, they're not making much progress against the Zhao. Dukyo agrees to lure out Keisha, as Shin will ambush him from the side. Sei is briefed of the fire at Kankoku Pass, and of all the critical battles. Unfortunately, the messengers cannot make contact with Osen. If the coalition army makes it to the royal harem, Ko will definitely suffer the most. That's because she's holding Sei's child. Shohei reveals that Osen has ambitions to become king one day. Thus, he does not possess any loyalty or patriotism. Osen lost the central fort, which has cut off their communications with the army. And with this, Osen decides to withdraw from the fort. Ordo now wishes to scale a great cliff so that they can get behind the Kankoku Pass. Ordo confidently instructs his men to climb the cliff, as it looks like Chin's days are numbered. "What an idiot," says Osen. Arrows rain down on the Yan soldiers, as Ordo is shocked that someone caught him off guard in the mountains, which is supposed to be his specialty. Turns out that Osen was waiting to ambush Ordo from the start. Moryu aims to capture Ordo alive, but the Yan general slices off his head. Now Ordo would retreat to Osen's fortress, having lost 8,000 of his mountain soldiers, and these were among his best soldiers in his army. Meanwhile, the most important battle, Chu versus Chin, was reaching its climax. Moten looks to be in some trouble, but To comes in to provide assistance. Karen gives Koyoku 5,000 soldiers and instructs him to kill To. Koyoku spreads out his 5,000 men and makes a beeline for To's unit. Koyoku slices through Chin's soldiers as he attacks To with his Bakuya sword. Now To's army finds themselves encircled as Karen finally decides to enter the battlefield. While Koyoku keeps To preoccupied, Karen will smash through Chin's square formation. Karen begins her assault on the Ryokoku army. Now Taigo's unit is tasked with killing Karen, but they can't get through her elite soldiers. Roko Omi and Kano blitz Karen's forces from the rear, as Moten takes reserve forces to Ryokoku's position. Ohan's 5,000-man unit also targets Karen's army from the rear. Karen will now change locations, as she has her eyes set on General Mobu. It seems that Mobu's two-pronged echelon attack has failed, as the Kanmei army is putting up an effective defense. Now it turns out that Shohei was born in Chu, and he was the one that recommended to Mobu to use the echelon formation. Now by concentrating their forces on the flanks, it will open up a path to Kanmei, and from there, it's up to Mobu to finish the job. Realizing what Mobu wants, Kanmei sends out his cavalry to meet him. Mobu goes berserk as he smashes through the men. Now Shohei's plan requires Mobu to go all out in seeking Kanmei's head, and there's no margin for error. Mobu's troops break through the cavalry, as they now only need to pass through the brittle Kanmei line to reach the general. Ohan and Moten chase down Karen, as Moten wonders where Karen's other 5,000 elite soldiers went off to. Kanmei obliterates numerous soldiers as he throws his weapon at Mobu. Now both Mobu and Kanmei claim to be the strongest man in all of China, and there can only be one man, so they need to decide right now with a fight. Kanmei scores an early hit, asserting his dominance over Mobu. Now Kanmei has invaded many states within China, and he has never tasted defeat. Even Okatsu, one of Chin's 6th grade generals, suffered a devastating wound to Kanmei and was forced to retreat. Though for him, defeating one of Chin's strongest generals was no accomplishment, as he believes he transcends humanity. His duty is to make the strong realize what true strength is. Mobu then knocks Kanmei back, shocking everyone that's watching the battle, especially Kanmei. Now the two have the privilege of going all out, which they do happily with a flurry of blows. Now Kanmei's strength of attacks breaks Mobu's left arm. The true general then knocks him back with another reverberating strike. Now if we are to go by accomplishments, Kanmei is the strongest general in all of China. No one can compete with him, but Shohei nonetheless believes in Mobu's abilities. Just then, Mobu rises up and smashes onto Kanmei's mace, breaking the Chu general's arm in the process. "Kanmei! The strongest in all of China is me!" screams Mobu. Now Karen commands her brother to stab Mobu in the back of the heart, something her own troops find quite appalling. Upon seeing the cavalry deployed, Moten realizes that something is about to happen. Kanmei and Mobu are at their limits, as it looks like the conclusion is near. The two go in for one last epic clash, as Kanmei's mace shatters into pieces. Kanmei looks to pull out his sword as Karen's assassin goes in for Mobu. Moten then provides the necessary distraction, but gets knocked into the middle of the general's fight. Now Kanmei does not take kindly to this, as he attacks the boy with brute force. And as Moten is knocked down and looks to almost be dying, Mobu becomes absolutely enraged. And this surge in energy and fervor allows him to break Kanmei's sword and smash into his head. And with this, General Mobu is the victor in the battle. Now Shin's unit hears the cheers from the Shin army, meaning they did something fantastic. Following Kanmei's defeat, the battlefield descended into chaos once more. Now Moten's life hangs in the balance, but Mobu says his son will not die so easily. And with this, the general re-enters the battlefield. The Chu think he's some kind of monster, especially given the fact that he just fought Kanmei and he's going all out again. Karen has no interest in rallying Kanmei's troops, not that they would listen to her anyway. Now Mobu's army would soon dominate the battlefield, making it clear who was the victor that day. Each side's HQ would receive the news, and as expected, they would react in vastly different ways. Go-Ho-Mei doesn't seem rattled by Kanmei's death. In fact, having the Chu general dead is beneficial for the state of Wei, as it was something they were going to have to do anyway in the long run. Shin wants to take up Kanmei's post, but Riboku urges him not to be so reckless, lest he wants to lose his head. A report then comes in from Karen, stating that victory is assured and to be ready to move through Kankuku Pass at a moment's notice. Koyoku gave Toa everything he could handle, but was forced to retreat along with the rest of Karen's army. Koyoku is then furious at Karen for retreating, but the last remaining Chu general had a plan in place this entire time. Now remember how she dispatched 5,000 of her units somewhere else that no one else noticed? Well, it just so happens that they found their way behind Kankuku Pass, meaning that the Qin army was in for a rude awakening. Now Qin's army successfully pushes back Wei, but that's when the Chu army makes its move. Though Chu has suffered some embarrassment, Shin claims that they could still save face by claiming the biggest accomplishment in this war. The situation becomes utter chaos, as Karen revels in her masterful strategy coming to fruition. Boulder after boulder is removed from the doorway, as it looks like Kankuku Pass is about to fall, which means that Qin is absolutely screwed. That is, until Osen's army comes storming down the mountainside to the rescue. Shin is absolutely pissed that Ordo's army wasn't able to stop Osen. But unfortunately for Ordo, he doesn't know where Osen's army is at the moment. And fearing another surprise attack that would cost him 8,000 men, he's forced to hunker down at the fort. Chu then launches a signal for failure, which absolutely devastates Karen because she thought she had the perfect plan in place. It was crystal clear that Qin won the day, so the coalition army was forced to retreat and try again another day. And with this, Riboku and the others realized that the breakthrough to Kankoku Pass had become exceedingly difficult. The various men at Kanyo cheer on as they hear the good news. It turns out that from the very beginning that Mobu would be the offensive side of the military, and Osen would be the defensive side. And it has worked to absolute perfection. Now, even though it seems like it's the end of the coalition army, Dukyo and Shin are having their doubts. They sense that something bigger might be coming in the future, and that's because Riboku really hasn't made a move yet. Now the king of Chu, King Koretsu, is absolutely pissed that he lost 2 generals. Now as we find out, Renpa, who used to previously be with Zhao, sought asylum in Chu. Now unfortunately, because of the military arrangements, he can't really enter the battlefield at this point. He's not going to make any sort of difference. But he reminds the Chu king that Riboku has not made a move yet, and that still remains their biggest asset in the coalition war. And with that, Riboku would disappear from the coalition army that night, something only a few people knew about, as it seems like he's scheming something very devious. Now since things aren't going according to plan, the coalition generals bicker amongst themselves. They then wonder where Riboku went to, and Shin tells them that he's departed. However, he wants 1,000 elite soldiers from each one of the generals. Now while the other generals are confused by this, it seems like Karen has picked up on his scheme. Things proceed uneventfully for days 16 and 17. That is until a report comes in that the small city of Kasa has been invaded. Now there's 2 ways to get to Kanyo. One is through Kankoku Pass, and the other is through the Bu Pass. And as you can see on this map, Kasa is relatively close to Kanyo, so it seems like a very viable strategy for invading Kanyo, something that Riboku might do. And sure enough, it was none other than Riboku himself, as news of this reaches Sei's ears. Riboku's army besieges Jinshi City, and quickly moves on to the next one. Shohei wants Kanyo's soldiers to be ready for battle, and to lock all the gates. Karen is pleasantly surprised by Riboku's plan to funnel the troops from the battlefield on his secret mission. Riboku's army was now approaching the cities of Shoku and Ro. Shohei scattered soldiers on the nearby cliffs, but Riboku's army easily dispatched them. Kanyo is within their grasp, but that's when Dukyo and Shin come to spoil the party. 4 days ago, Dukyo noticed a small dust storm being kicked up by the 1,000-men units, and due to their tenaciousness, they caught up with Riboku with a force of 5,000 men. Riboku utilizes a spiral-like formation to prevent the enemy from getting close. The Chin army gets spread around the battlefield, just as intended by Riboku. Everyone remains confused, except for Dukyo, who uses his instincts to pinpoint Riboku's location. Now, not even Keisha could figure out Riboku's formation, making Dukyo quite the respectable man. That being said, his opponent will now be the terrifying Hoken. Dukyo realizes that this is the man that took down Oki, so it's time for a little bit of vengeance. Hoken's strength rattles Dukyo, and even cracks his weapon. Riboku says that defeat is assured for Dukyo. Dukyo calls Hoken a buffoon, who has yet to realize the contradiction within himself. Dukyo pushes back Hoken, as Riboku's army begins to slaughter the Chin. Shin rushes in, hoping to provide Dukyo with assistance. Dukyo, however, informs Shin to go forward, and forward means going to Kanyo. Dukyo tosses his shield towards Shin, as he unleashes absolute fury on Hoken. Unfortunately, Hoken cuts off his left arm. Dukyo then looks to return the favor by putting a wire around Hoken's arm. With his final words, he encourages Shin to never let that fire die out, as the general falls to the ground. In a flashback, Dukyo never became part of Chin's great generals. That's because unlike the other generals, he was never pursuing a dream. The battlefield was his home. It was a way of life, and that's all he really needed. In the now, Shin wants to go by Dukyo, but Heki punches him in the face to make him come to his senses. Heki takes control of the forces en route to Kanyo, as Riboku declares that Hoken is the lead general from here on out. Riots break out in Kanyo, as the citizens are aware of the incoming Zhao army. Shoban then finds out that Ryofo has made preparations for Aisei's assassination, since he himself has no intentions of fighting Riboku to the bitter end. He will thusly offer up Aisei's head and offer Kanyo as a reward to Riboku. Sei arms himself and tells Shohei that he still has one more trick up his sleeve, and that's the city of Sai. Sei meets up with Koa, as the girl is fearful that this will be the last time that she gets to see him. Sai has a large population of citizens, and they could all be used to stop Riboku. They just need a capable leader. Ryofu is furious that Sei left the capital. Nevertheless, with the king gone, he looks to sit on the throne himself. "The throne will always belong to royalty, you insolent scoundrel," says Seikyo. Seikyo sits on the throne, as he reveals that he talked to Sei before he left. Now Shin's army is at their physical limits, reaching Sai with downtrodden looks on their faces. That is, until they're met with the presence of King Aisei. And with this, Shin is at a loss of words, as he leans on Aisei's shoulder for just a little bit. Afterwards, Shin finds out that they only have 5,000 soldiers to Riboku's 30,000. Sei wants to transform the citizens of Sai into soldiers, so that Shin might have a chance at survival. Shoban introduces himself and the king before the people, and understandably so, the citizens are absolutely shocked. Sei says that if Sai cannot stop the coalition army, Chin will perish. Kenshu, a young boy, offers to fight for the survival of Chin. And with this, the citizens rally together and choose to fight for the sake of the kingdom. After hearing the speech, Shoban is confident that Sei can surpass King Sho. Now they only have 3 commanders, but they have 4 walls to defend, which is going to be a huge problem. Just then, Kaioki brings 100 vassals from Shohei, and Moki is here as well for his very first battle. Now preparations are complete, as Shin always seems to be by Aisei's side when a crisis breaks out. Riboku's army reaches Sai, as they're surprised to see that the citizens have taken up arms against them. Riboku commends the citizens on their valor, but warns them that they have no hope against this elite army. He thusly offers to spare them if they surrender here and now. Shin tells him to shove it, as he rallies the entire city of Sai for the protection of Shin. With no other recourse, Zhao is forced to attack Sai. Zhao creates an early foothold with their massive ladder. The Haishin unit performs well, as expected. Fute of Zhao, a 3,000-man commander, looks to put an end to Shin's fire, but it will have to wait. The eastern wall is experiencing difficulties, as they are firing their arrows into the wind. Heki, who's watching the eastern wall, struggles on. Ten sends the remnants of Dukyo's army to help out. Shinsei-jo, general of the Zhao army, wishes to use his own elite troops to dye the castle walls red. the city of Sai holds off for the first day, claiming a huge victory against the coalition army. At Kankoku Pass, things remain at a standstill, though for the coalition army, this is acceptable, since it prevents Shin from returning to Kanyo to provide support. Riboku decides to split his army in half, and will attack in the dead of night. Now, while half his army sleeps through the night, the other half will attack and make noise all night, making sure that the Shin army doesn't get any sleep. In the morning, Sai was thrown into battle in the worst way possible. At noon, Kaine and Fute decide to make their moves. Fute then takes out Ryosen, 100-man commander of the Haishin unit. Fute then takes down Denyu, but even though he took a wound, he's still alive. Shin attacks from the rear, but Fute manages to dodge with his quick reflexes. Fute continues to dodge, as he gashes Shin across the face with his blade. He then says that he'll claim the last spot in Zhao's 3 Great Heavens. Now Shin compares his speeds to Kyou Kai's. He then remembers how she would wait to bait him with her movements. So to win this battle, he needs to bait Fute, which he does beautifully to land a critical strike. Kaine then focuses her efforts on killing Ten. Instead of this, she knocks out the Shin strategist, and looks to take her as a prisoner. Having noticed this, Shin becomes furious and attacks with full force. Kaine is then knocked to the edge of the wall, but Ten catches her before she falls. Now Kaine wants to take Ten with her, but Shin is furious and pulls Ten back. He then proceeds to scold her for her disobedience. Fute looks to retaliate, but Ryosen, who is still alive at the moment, throws him off of the castle wall and onto the ground. Riboku then wonders who would have been able to inspire the people of Sai to fight so well. Because she allowed Kaine to live, if Shin were to fall now, it would be all her fault. Goddamn Ten, what the hell did you do? Because sleep doesn't seem like a possibility, Sei decides to raise the morale of the people of Sai with his presence. Upon witnessing all of this, Shin realizes that Sei is a far greater man than he expected. Shoban reveals that they've got a maximum of 8 days to hold out. Anything after that point, and they're utterly screwed. The citizens of Sai continue to push back the Zhao army, as Riboku is flabbergasted that they persist on. And after the 4th day of fighting, Riboku wonders if it's possible that the king himself might be rallying the troops. Sai's citizens are at their limits, so Sei decides to join the fight for an extra bit of inspiration. Sei continues to fight well by cutting one of the Zhao's arms. Unfortunately, he gets blindsided and suffers a severe wound. The Zhao soldiers look to finish the job, but Shin comes in to save the day, quite literally. After going berserk for a bit, Shin catches Sei's body before it hits the ground. Sei immediately stands up, not wanting to lose the morale of the troops. Riboku hears about the king's presence, and begins to consider the possibility of an inspirational king that could transcend them all. This makes him especially dangerous, which is why he needs to go down now. Riboku encourages his troops to end the battle here and now by killing the king of Shin. With the end of another day, Shoban recommends that they evacuate the king. Shin is thusly tasked with convincing Sei to evacuate, but the king will do no such thing. Shoban is unhappy with Shin afterwards, but Sei will not give up on this endeavor. The Sai troops look tired and dejected, but Shin says that today is the moment of truth. Zhao looks to finish the battle today, but that's when Sei comes out on his horse to inspire his men once more. Though, given his wounds, he was doing everything in his power to mask the pain. The Haishin unit goes on a killing frenzy to set the tone. Kyoki begins redistributing his troops amongst the other walls to help out. Denyu and Ryosen, having recovered from the wounds, re-enter the battle with a surge of rage. After holding out another day, Shin is at his physical and psychological limit. Now Sei would talk with the Haishin unit before falling asleep, as tomorrow was going to be their last day of combat. This day would become the Great War of Shin versus the Coalition Army's final day. Shin cannot resist the persistence of the Coalition Army anymore, as they break into the city of Sai. Soldiers and cavalry rush into the city, as the citizens of Shin can do nothing more than watch in horror. That is until... Rejoice, Ko, a miracle has occurred, says Shin. Now off in the mountains, we see the emergence of Yotanwa and the Western Mountain tribes. Now it turns out that Sei reached out to the mountain tribes before the battle, which is why they figured they had about 8 days to hold out. And because they kept up the defense of the city long enough, they now hold a major advantage with Yotanwa's army of 30,000. Though Riboku was aware of the mountain tribes, he completely overlooked a possible alliance with Shin. The Alliance army retreated in droves, as Yotanwa's army tore through them like a hot knife through butter. Riboku realizes that a full retreat would mean that the coalition war has ended in complete failure. Just before he gives the final order, Hoken enters the battlefield with a crazed look in his face. I mean, what else is new? Yotanwa wants to take on Hoken, but Shin says it's his battle to be had. And with this, Shin faces off against the man who took down General Oki and Dukyo. Shin's horse bites Hoken's horse in the neck, dismounting the two warriors. Shin defends against Hoken's attack, but gets knocked back in the process. Despite his injuries, he stands up, ready for more. Hoken looks to finish things here, but Shin targets his weapon and manages to knock him off of balance. Shin proceeds to thrust his sword into Hoken's chest, yet the wound is not deep enough to end the battle. Shin then follows up by slashing the hulking man across the face. The Zhao general responds by whacking Shin across the face with the backside of his weapon. Now, vexing as it might be, with the presence of the mountain army, Riboku has no other alternative but to retreat from the battlefield. Shinsei Joe relays the message to Hoken. As the angered Zhao general realizes he has no other choice, Hoken then prepares to leave as he says, "I shall remember your name, Shin." After they leave, Shin immediately collapses to the ground from exhaustion. Yotanwa, however, will not allow the coalition army to retreat so easily, as they chase them down like wild beasts. 241 BC, the coalition siege of Sai City is effectively repelled. Kanyo receives word of the good news, as Ryofu is none so happy. After the fighting is done, Sei formally congratulates Yotanwa for saving the state of Qin. "Looks like we did it," says Shin. "Aye," responds Issei. That night, the citizens of Sai and the Qin mountain dwellers shared in their victory together. In the morning time, Shin meets up with Issei. Although they won the war, the city of Sai lost half of its population. "Were it not for them, Qin would have perished," says Sei, as he bows to the people of Sai while they sleep. Yotanwa's army has to go back to the mountains and continue their own war, so they say goodbye to the people of Sai. Likewise, Sei needs to return to Kanyo where he belongs. Riboku returns to the other coalition generals with the bad news. Now the coalition army completely retreats from Kankoku Pass, but because they were betrayed by Chi, that's their next target. And that's because Chi helped out Qin by not attacking. Mobu returns the favor by attacking the rear of the coalition army. After capturing a few smaller cities, the coalition army would officially disband. At the royal harem, Ko is relieved to see that Issei returned to her. Ohan is pissed that Shin let Hoken get away, but what he's really mad about is that Shin outdid him in this large-scale war. And with that said, it is now time for the award ceremony. The #1 award goes to General Mobu for having taken down General Kanmei of the Chu army. The citizens of Sai and Yotanwa's army also receive awards as well, for their efforts in protecting Kanyo. And finally, the last reward goes to Shin of the Haishin unit, for defeating General Mangoku and for clashing with Hoken of Zhao's Three Great Heavens. And with this, he's now promoted to 3,000-man commander. Shin now revels in the huge army that he now oversees. Now their unit is tasked with assisting in rebuilding Qin, and by protecting the people from enemy soldiers. Now part of Shin's army is 500 members of Dukyo's soldiers. Shin then finds out that Ohan was promoted to 3,000-man commander, and that Moten was promoted to 2,000-man commander. They then talk about Kyou Kai, as we notice that she's in the state of Zhao on Mount Ro. "We finally meet, 10 of the Yu tribe," says Kyou Kai. Now just a bit before this, Kyou Kai meets up with Kyomei, an agent of the Kyo tribe. While escaping from the Shiyu ritual, Kyomei killed every one of her pursuers. She then points out Mount Ro, the current location of Yu Ren. After confronting Yu Ren on the mountain, Kyou Kai gets quickly surrounded by the members of the Shiyu assassins. Kyou Kai goes on the offensive, but it's not going to be easy with her being outnumbered. Yu Ren reveals that she organized the trap for Kyosho, and she even beheaded her with her own hands. Kyou Kai becomes enraged by this, as she's surrounded by the Yu assassins, the things you see before you when submerged in the depths. Kyou Kai does well to blend offense with defense to keep the various Yu assassins off balance. In a flashback, Kyou Kai describes the priestess stance to Kyosho, saying that things slow down for her, and it even feels like she's in the middle of a deep blue body of water. And then now, as she goes deeper and deeper into the dance, she murders every last member of the Yu assassins. Yu Ren has seen enough, as she enters the battlefield and knocks Kyou Kai out of the dance. Yu Ren was able to see through the dance, so Kyou Kai considers going deeper this time. "Extreme short battles is my style of combat. I will dive into the deepest possible dance to finish this in an instant." Now despite the speed of her attacks, Kyou Kai is blocked at every turn. In fact, Yu Ren is able to knee her in the gut. Now the dance cuts off outside emotions to achieve full power. But Yu Ren explains to achieve the perfect dance, one must cut off all emotions from the outside, and that is the purpose of the ritual. Now Yu Ren murdered her own younger sister to complete the ritual, and by doing so, as she became a complete monster. The perfect banquet of insanity, Kyou Kai. Kyou Kai persists on in a fit of rage, but she's no match for Yu Ren's skill. Kyou Kai apologizes to her sister, stating that Yu Ren is a true monster who has overcome rage in pursuit of limitless inner power. She then sees a distant light as she's reminded of her bond with the Shin unit, and seeing this vision is all the inspiration she needs to rise to her feet once more. Though Yu Ren and Hoken have achieved incredible strength, it's not the ultimate strength. That's because there's an inner opposing strength that contradicts the darkness. Kyou Kai puts the pressure on Yu Ren, as Kyou worries that she might be going too deep into the dance. In a flashback, Kyou Kai served as Kyosho's light as she was in the darkness. In the now, Kyou Kai draws upon more and more strength by plunging ever deeper into the darkness. But she knows she can always return again to the physical realm because she possesses the inner light. And with this, Kyou Kai stabs Yu Ren in the back of the chest. There exists in the world scenery that you never knew of. Now, it does not make sense to Yu Ren for Kyou Kai to defeat her in battle, since she never went through the ritual. You surely will be hunted down by the next Shiyu. Definitely. Let them come. I will never lose, says Kyou Kai. The assassins look to take advantage of Kyou Kai, but Kyou prevents this from happening. Afterwards, Kyou Kai wants Mei to hide Yu Ren's body, so that the ritual won't happen anytime soon. After avenging her sister, Kyou Kai wanted to follow her into death. But now she sees a new path opening up to her, a completely different path. A path where she can live life to the fullest. 392 days after leaving the Shin unit, Kyou Kai finally begins her journey back. And with this, Kyou Kai officially rejoins the Shin unit, propelling their performance to new heights. Now to live life to the fullest, Kyou Kai has set 2 new goals for herself. 1 is to become a general, and 2 is to have Shin's child. While Shin and Kyou Kai spar with each other, Shin claims that he'll become a super great general that will overpower the other states of China. However, with no major wars taking place, room for advancement is limited. News then spreads of General Mogo being on his deathbed. Mogo then has a dream of the Qin 6 great generals. He stirs awake as he finds Moten and Shin by his side. Now Mogo was born in the state of Qi, but he eventually found his way to Qin. He did not possess the talent of a great general, and so he hated the Qin generals with a passion, but in truth, he admired their talent. Moten, Shin, Ohan, climb your way up the heights together. 240 BC, 7th year of Sei's reign, General Mogo passes away. To me, you are the greatest hero, great General Mogo. Thank you for everything you have done. Thank you, Grandpa. Now off on the battlefield, General Mobu hears of the news and toasts his father in the setting sun.